Welcome to Martial Secrets, where we seek out the most interesting and skilled martial artists to share their insights and years of training with you, the listener. I'm your host, Chris Wilder, and on this broadcast, John Roseberry. A boxer, karateka, judoka, John Roseberry has trained in the martial arts for some 50 years. A 7-time All-United States Marine Corps judo champion, he's also been the All-Service champion 3 times and an alternate to the U.S. Olympic judo team. A direct student of Sekichi Taguchi and Goju-Ryu karate and former Marine Corps drill instructor, Roseberry has built an international martial arts organization, including his 7,000-foot square home dojo in Lincoln, Nebraska. John Roseberry, welcome to Martial Secrets.
Well, how are you doing?
Yeah, if I were doing any better, I'd have to be twins.
Well, there you go.
You wound up in, talking about Okinawa, you wound up in Mr. Taguchi's karate dojo. How did you wind up on his floor? You share with us your first impressions of Mr. Taguchi and the dojo in Nakanomachi.
Well, what happened is I was heading back to Okinawa. I was on a ship, and there was a fellow by the name of Joe White, which was actually the very first American actually in Mr. Taguchi's dojo, and he's also the very first American to make black belt out of Mr. Taguchi. I met him, and so we just kind of fellowshipped, and it just kind of worked out to where he was stationed directly across the street from where I was stationed, actually on Okinawa. And so we were down in the village one day and ran into him, after we got over there and stuff, and he said, well, I'm going to go train, So I followed him right on up to the dojo, and I met Mr. Taguchi and just like that. And then I just kind of shared, Joe had mentioned my judo and stuff like that. And at that time I was training under Mr. Matsumoto, which was probably about not even a mile from the dojo. The 2 dojos probably not even a mile apart,
Is anything in Okinawa a mile apart?
In some places. But anyway, Joe White was an introduction there, and so I started my training under Mr. Taguchi, and I can recall my first 3 classes, I didn't throw not one punch. I did come in, we did bow in with the whole class, and then he says, Roseberry, you go over there and sit down, which I did. And it was kind of a test, to see was I going to waste your time. So this happened 3 different occasions. And the 4th time I went back there, he said, you let me start doing the exercises and stuff like that. But at the end of those classes, I was given a rag along with some other Okinawans, and I had to mop the floor down on your hands and knees and your damp rag and stuff like that. And so that happened 3 different times. And so finally, I was the only one, I didn't see many Americans actually in a dojo, but then as some of the Okinawan becoming trained, he would do the same thing with them also. So I just looked at that as a test and to say, if you're going to waste my time or are you really here to train, And so I continued on, and so here I am. That's exactly right, and my slogan now, the answer is on the floor. So I don't know if you've seen my web, but we're going right across the front there, the answer is on the floor. Keep it simple and keep it practical,
Well, let's talk about that. You do talk about KIS and KIP. What are those words, and how do listeners bring them to their training?
Well, number one, what I call kuchiwaza, mount technicians. There's 9 billion of them out there. Okay, so I tell students, stay away from politics, keep your mouth shut, get on the floor and just train. So while people are running their mouths or kuchiwaza or whatever thing, you're out there training, And so sometimes you watch movies, for an example, you see guys flying through the air. Well, you'd just be surprised that the people think that's people are actually doing that. I said, well, some of them are doing it, but then a lot of them have an aid of a trampoline or something like that. So to me, that's not very practical. And the other part of it is that you see a lot of old fancy stuff. I watched a demonstration some years ago in Long Beach, and the announcer made a statement, Mr. So-and-so, I won't call her names, going to execute 32 techniques. Well, he didn't. And the guy threw 1 punch, and he stood there, and the guy threw 32 techniques on him, and then the guy finally falls down. Well, I think if you got to have to throw 32 techniques, man, you better take off or get you a pistol or something and get out of training. So to me, that's not very practical, and it's certainly not simple. The fancy stuff's not going to work in the street, And I tell students, you not learn this thing to fight in the street. You learn this thing not to fight in the street, And then I tell them, just keep it practical. Just keep it practical, And so that's basically what I just share with the students, The fancy stuff don't work, and just be the best that you can be.